All right, what's going on? My goal here is basically to run through how I get my sound, how I design my synths, and what plugins I use to help get that sound. So for starters, I want to say that I don't use software synths most of the time. I would be using the Moog Sub 37, JDXA by Roland, the Microfreak by Arturia, and sometimes the Model D. And that's how I get my sound. I'm going to replicate what I would do in Serum. However, you can get roughly the same sound. There's a lot of different things that you can do with Serum, obviously. So I'm just going to play around as if I were kind of designing a track and explain my thought processes as I walk through it. So I've got Serum pulled up here. We can just reinitialize it as well. This is Sawwave. So, and bear with me, I haven't used Serum for quite some time, so I might move a bit slowly or have to redo things. So I'll edit the video as best as I can to remove those things. So pitch it down. And then I would get another one. And it would probably be more like it would probably be some kind of squarish saw wave now. So next thing is the filter. Get a high octave filter for sounds a bit more Moogy. Just add some drive to it. Put an envelope on the filter. Some release. So that already sounds pretty good. Another thing that I do, we definitely want to add some noise. Go pink noise. All right, next, I'm not going to use any of these, but I am going to go to the matrix. I'm going to go to envelope 3, and I'm going to put this on the global master tune. And let's make the decay. So this is kind of the thing that we would do if we were designing a kick, where we pitch things down very rapidly. So maybe 48. And the only goal of this is to help build the transient on the plucks here. So let's take the decay all the way down. Just add a little clickiness to it. Go even higher. It's been a while since I've used Serum, like I said, but maybe like 80. Now, let's write a melody. So if it was me, I'd be using a minor key most likely. So let's do something like the 1. What is this? So I got 2, 3, 4, 6. Two, 3, 4. So I think that sounds good. Now we'll duplicate this. Put this here. Hit it again. So the sound is very basic. And that's something that I want to point out, is that you don't need some kind of really elaborate sound. You just want a basic good sound. And then I would even print this if I was using the Moog. I would just record it to audio and then do everything else with post-processing. So before I do anything else, and you're going to hear this pop pretty quickly, I think. First thing I'm going to do is EQ, get that out of the way. Just some rough EQ, not dialed perfectly. And the only thing that I'm really thinking right now is that I know I need to remove low mids. A mix fills up with low mids very quickly, so I would remove these. Another one probably. High mids, I'm hearing some stuff. Let's shelf this. My hats are going to be here, so I'll take it down before 10 kilohertz. And then, so there's a few plugins that I'm basically going to use for every single synth, or for the most part, some variation of their settings. First thing is Eventide's Black Hole, just a reverb, but a very good reverb. So obviously that's too much, so we'll take down the lows, maybe keep the highs up. Take the size and the mix down. Definitely getting somewhere. So the next thing that I would use is delay, and I just use the stock delay here. Put it after the reverb. So now let's automate the cutoff here. I think I want this to pluck higher. Now, another very, very important thing is we need to put it in mono, because a lot of that, the effects are creating a lot of space. So by putting the signal in mono before it hits the effects will kind of be in the sides, where the actual synth itself will just be contained to the middle, and it creates some contrast for the mix. So probably not all the way mono, but very close. Much cleaner. So another thing that I would do is use Erosion, which is Ableton's name for, it's basically adding noise. I'll show you. So I'm basically just adding a little noise to the signal here. And then I also might use a vocoder. So I'm sure whatever DAW is being used has a vocoder, and this is going to be also very subtle. You can tell why. So I would just drop the just you know, changing the frequency here. This one's very subtle. It just adds a little bit more noise and dimension to it. So the other plugin, which is not stock, that I am definitely going to use for essentially every sound, just like Black Hole, is Sound Toys Decapitator. Just distortion, essentially. So I would actually put that as the very first thing. Let's EQ first, and then Decapitator, I think. I like this E setting, maybe darken it a bit. I think now we can actually drop the envelope here. So one other change I would make is that I'm still hearing a lot of low end, low mid end in the sound, which I think is too much. So this is in mono, or close to it. So we're going to take a mid-side EQ and just reduce the low end for the middle a bit more than this EQ, so that we still got a little bit of low end in the sides. Because I feel like there's going to be a bass line here that is going to clash around this area. So I think this sound is really close to done. So it definitely sounds a bit more digital than if I was using the Moog, but it's very close. All right, so I also wanted to show using ANA, which I'm more familiar with. So I know that Serum was asked for, but I'm going to also demonstrate the same kind of thing in ANA. It's what I would choose over Serum myself because it feels a bit more similar to analog gear. So let's initialize this. Again, we'll just basically make the same sort of patch. We've got, let's actually get a sub in this one. It's not quite as, doesn't have quite as much low end. Triangle sub. Saw, 1 octave down. And then some kind of alternate saw here. Put the voice up just to turn it on, right? One voice. That's good. Now let's use the Mogi low pass. Bit of resonance. So this is our amp envelope here. Or no, this is our amp envelope here. So I'm gonna take the sustain down a bit, keep the release fairly high. And then we're going to take the filter envelope here. And that's, I think, about where I want it with the decay. Now we're going to send the envelope to the filter envelope. Drive, put some drive here. Now I'm literally just going to copy and paste the same chain because I'm essentially going for the same sound, just different synth. This one needs less reverb. For this one, let's get more of a square sound. I like that better. So the thing I like about ANA that you can probably do in Serum, but I don't know how, is I will automate the envelope to the filter rather than the filter frequency. Or maybe even do both. I could show both. This one is not as plucky. And then I could also do the frequency itself of the filter. Probably less dramatic though. So let's go back to the first sound, and we would use a glue compressor as well, which I forgot to mention, any compressor would do, so essentially just compressing, right? I definitely want to hear the transient, so keep the attack high and keep the release low, so that way it's not compressing the signal after the transient. I just want to catch that transient, but I don't want to catch all of it, right? I just want to catch some of it. So I want to hear it, but I also want to squish it a little bit. And I put the ratio on 2. Think about 2.5 is good. And let's use the same compressor again. So for my music, I probably wouldn't even let these get that high. It would probably be more like the whole time. I like A&A. I feel like the tone just is more pleasing. I would use LFO tool to help with the transients. Instead of sidechain compression, I would just use LFO tool. So I usually do something about this, go up to 4, keep the smooth up so there's no clicking. And for a lead, I would actually not, this depth is basically dry wet, I would actually keep it a little bit lower. Maybe something like this. Okay, so now I've put a kick in here and you can hear it with the kick. So something I would do is probably leading in from a breakdown or something of that sort, I would have the depth of the LFO tool at 0 with when the kick isn't there on the breakdown, and then I would, you know, have it kick on once the actual kick starts. So that sums up our basic melody. Now the next thing I want to do is create a different kind of synth, something that would be like in the background. And then after that, we'll maybe try to pad. So we'll use Serum for this again, because that's what was requested. And before I do that, I'm actually going to change these melodies, because what I'd actually probably do is something more like this. I'll show you where I would separate them. So building off of our main kind of melody here, let's take one of these. We're going to do some kind of high plucky noises for the background. So let's initialize this here. I'll move a bit quicker for this one. The filter. Same thing, let's do analog WRD. It's probably more like syncopated. So again, very basic sound, but our goal here is to make something for the background so we don't have to do very much. So get a decapitator here. Change the dry wet a bit. This will be an all mono. A bit of EQ as well, Q8. And we're going to take out a lot. Something like that. Very drastic. Delay and get really crazy with it. I think non-ping pong. I think 3/3 and dry wet around here. Get the reverb in it. This one can be much bigger. And that's extreme, obviously, so we're not going to leave that there the whole time. The next thing we're going to do is auto pan 1. Kind of slowly going back and forth. And then more importantly, before the delay or before the reverb or both, we're going to add an auto filter and we're going to put an LFO on the auto filter. So it's not there the whole time. Oops. After delay, before reverb. Let's lose even more low end on it. I think this would sound a bit better if it was pitched up somehow. And let's add more delay to release to this. Alright, so we've got a fresh instance of Serum here, so we can get a pad going. So, initialized. I know I'm in F, so let's try F and F, an octave apart. We'll just start there. Poly 8, that's probably good. So let's give this like 3. Give this 2 voices. Don't have to tune it too much. Let's drop it. Let's get another one. 2 voices, so that's 4 voices. Bit aggressive, right? We want something softer. It's a pad. Get another one. Let's use 4 voices on both. Filter. Let's go 18 for the octave. Same deal, we're gonna get an envelope on it. Much much less aggressive envelope for a pad. And let's add some attack to the amp and filter. Now let's actually write something here. So 2, 3, 4. So let's go with a triad here. If we can see how this sounds. I think that sounds rather good. Just like that, nice and dry. You almost have a mousetrap sound. But that's not what we're doing. We're going to go a bit deeper. So first bit is definitely cut out lows and stuff. Cut out around, what is this, 3K? A nice sharp one here, I think, just using my ears. Excellent. So again, we're going to use an auto filter, and we're going to put an LFO on it, bring up resonance a bit. Let's go back to our lead real quickly, actually, and I want to also add an auto filter with an LFO on it. So that's that. Now let's go to the pad again. Doesn't sound like much, right? Because we've got the filter so low. Well, here's what we're going to do. The key takeaway here is low filters. Really making use of filters, keeping them low and being creative with filters. And then having the effects after the filter. Now let's get black hole on it. Again, this can be bigger. I'm just putting the pre-delay around 12. So this one, we'll put it maybe halfway to mono. We are going to use Decapitator on this as well. Put it after the EQ. We're going to use another EQ for some mid-side stuff. Let's take a listen with... And then we're going to automate this and bring it up over time. And then another thing we're going to do is put the LFO tool on both of these, right? Essentially just sidechain compression Although with the pad, I would actually be a bit more dramatic, or like slower essentially with the LFO tool here. And then I would actually drop the LFO depth a bit. And then another thing that I'm going to do with the LFO tool is essentially make a gate. Now I do have some of these presets, so I'll just use one of these for the sake of demonstrating and being faster, but you can just make your own. Put it before the auto pan. Now, lastly, we can just make a baseline here. So let's initialize this again. I'm thinking some kind of triplet bass here, so we're gonna pitch these down. That sounds terrible as it is, so let's go 24 here. Drive, fat. Super aggressive. Envelope. Obviously, we're going to EQ. My kick is hitting around 92. Here. Scoop out the low mids. Then we still need LFO tool, so let's copy paste on the baseline. This one we definitely want the most dramatic because we need the most room for the kick. Delete those. So then we'll take this up. Let's put Decapitator on the baseline as well. And just for the sake of experimentation, we could also do like a more house baseline, something like maybe something more like keep the alternations less frequent. Now this is primarily about synths and synthesis, but I just wanted to, for the sake of completeness, do some samples here. I like audio tent. Again, we'll use our Decapitator. So we're definitely going to want some like rolling hats. I actually like this one. We're actually going to add a bit of LFO tool on here. I'm going to keep that first hat loud because it's with the kick, but then I'll drop like there it is. Let's put this one here. And maybe this one here. I'll have to shorten these to keep these tight. Instead of Decapitator, I'm going to use something called Driver from Native Instruments. Essentially just distortion, but take down the color, a little bit of distortion, drop the frequency barely. And then a bit of reverb, which is also why our LFO tool is on there. So I'll put the reverb before the LFO tool. Let's put the driver on the claps also. Very tight, small reverb. And another important thing is we're gonna do some track delay here. Let's do it on the lead also. Flux. And I think that's essentially what I would do. So that's about what I would do. Definitely some more mixing would take place after this. And again, I would be using analog gear, so it sounds a little bit better in my opinion, but that's about how I do it. All right, so feel free to hit me up. Let me know if you have questions, that whole deal. And I hope that you learned something. Cheers.